Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, just past your lunch hour. I am so excited for this panel. You guys go ahead and come up. I'm going to have the team provide their introductions. Way back in the day, I worked for Lockheed Martin bringing technology in for spacecraft manufacturing. And of course, what we see is bringing the technology in for enterprise is much different. It's a whole different animal than bringing the technology into other types of use cases and environments. And so I'm so excited today for this panel. We have 3 different industry spaces. We have Coca-Cola, we have Thermo Fisher, and we have KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. So we're going to get to talk about how you start off with bringing the technology into these types of industry spaces. We'll have a chance to talk about some of the challenges and possibly some ways that you can get through those challenges. And then also, what do we need to think about long term as we're bringing the technologies in? How do we think about future-proofing the technology? And then, of course, we'll save some time for questions. If you have questions, have those ready for the end of the presentation, and we'll see if the group here can help address some of those questions for you. So let's start off with introductions. Who would like to go first?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. So, hi everyone. My name is Carnrite. I'm Senior Sales Enablement Manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific. So I lead a team that basically helps our sales team by building different tools, digital tools mostly, and marketing programs. A big piece of that is an XR or immersive content building strategy and training strategy. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. It's about 5 years we've had the program up and running, and just excited to share some of our best practices and challenges and solutions that we've found along the way.
Excellent. And Ivo?
Yes, thank you for having me today. I'm working for KLM Ground Services, so anything involved with passenger handling, baggage handling, on the ramp, everywhere at the airport basically. Fueling, defueling, all that kind of thing. The last couple of years I've become involved in virtual reality. First off through the Flying V, that's the airplane of the future we are designing. Very suitable to do that in VR. And besides that we have several XR products, mostly for training purposes within KLM.
Thanks, and I'm Michael Whatley. I lead the Service Innovation and Performance team for Coca-Cola, so that's a lot of words to say that we train technicians how to install and repair dispensing equipment, as well as support our internal call centers for sales support, consumer interactions, and then reactive service, first line of defense kind of tier support. So we've been on a virtual transition for the past 4 years, kind of moving at scale, so that we can get away from doing in-person hands-on training and focus more on how do we use technology to reach technicians faster and more efficiently.
Excellent. So at this event, one of the trends that I see is there's many companies that come here to assess the technology and how they can get started in this space. So I'm curious to hear from each of you, how did your company decide to get started in XR? And what was that primary use case at the start that really caught their attention that allowed you to do what you're doing today, to move forward and to get it funded and grounded?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we have, in the division that I work within, we have a lot of very large products. So think of any laboratory, you need refrigeration, you need different types of equipment that are often very large. And there was a need for us to be able to show these things effectively to our potential customers. So we started to build digital twins back in 2019 to see, would this be effective? In addition to that, we started to build some 3D advanced visualization tools to help our customers configure their spaces. So it was, here's the product that's going to meet your scientific need, but how is it going to fit in this space? And so it solved some challenges of physically bringing products to both events and to customer demo sites, but it also solved challenges on returns. We reduced our returns by having this advanced tool that could allow us to show our customers that they needed to buy a certain size of a product to fit in their room. So very practical challenges that we started to look at solving, and it was a very easy just easy to convince some of our leadership to give it a try.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so they saw the value right off the start, and you had a champion that was willing to support.
We were very lucky. The first person I pitched it to didn't feel the same, definitely. So I did get shot down. But no, I did. There was a new president, and I said, I think we could really use this. And I was a sales rep in the field. Oops, I talk a lot with my hands. So I was a sales rep in the field that helped to give that voice of the person that would be using the tool and say, hey, this could save me time. Like I could sell more if I don't have to do this.
Yes.
Spend an hour measuring a room,
So I'll flip it real quick. Is there anyone in the audience who's worked with the technology who had to get past a skeptic at some point? And there's last, because it's probably all of us, right? I know that we had them in our early days.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. No, we had the same. It started within KLM, within our IT department, when VR was coming up, and IT guys they like this kind of thing. And what you also need is managers that support the idea. So there were a couple of managers that said, hey, that's a good thing for me. So they developed their own VR together with the IT guys. But it evolved into a special center of excellence now. We have within KLM our own VR lab that's producing VR for us. So that's quite unique for an airline, actually. So that gives us a lot of flexibility in choosing our own VR. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Ours was really based on efficiency. So, when we had our in-person training, we kind of had to bring that to a screeching halt for COVID, as a lot of people did, right? So we were looking for ways that we could deliver the same education to the technicians so that they could service equipment as quickly as possible. For our in-person classes, we had a backlog of 2 years for time and resources to be able to get out and do this training. So we were looking for ways to do things more efficiently. And at first, we weren't looking at VR-type technology. We were looking more at just virtual meetings like Teams and Zoom.
What was your backlog for 2 years?
For our in-person class requests. So we have 6 trainers that would travel around the country.
Wow.
But the requests that were coming in, there were so many of them because technicians needed the training quickly. We couldn't fill the need. So we started doing virtual broadcasts, and that brought the backlog down quite a bit. We were able to reach a lot more people, about 5 times as many people in the same amount of time. So it was a good foray that way. But the thing that we really focused on in those virtual broadcasts was, even with the best cameras and the best lighting, it's still hard to see around some of the components inside the dispensers. So when we started using 3D models and digital twins so that we could take away some of the not so necessary components for people to be able to see how the dispenser functions, how to service it, how to remove parts, how to change parts, things like that. And once we did that, we started seeing efficiency gains in technician performance. So we started continuing down that path, and we're in our early stages of doing more VR-based simulations.
Interesting. So we heard back in the day that COVID drove the technology forward, and it sounds like that was applicable to what you were doing.
Yes, that's the silver lining of COVID.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And Ivo, you mentioned IT. So I'm curious, at what stage IT became involved with each of your efforts?
Sorry, go ahead.
Basically, what I said is that the IT guys, they are open for VR. The business at KLM side was not so much aware even of it. So it was just a natural process where IT met some managers that were enthusiastic, which is, by the way, not enough, of course. If you want to embed XR into your organization, you need much more than that. Even during COVID, it actually did not do us much good for VR because, a lot of managers changed and time had changed. There were no new products being developed. So actually, we needed to give it a boost after COVID to get it back on the road. And now it's like we all notice we're back on the road, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, IT was very early involved. We worked with a vendor, a third-party vendor, to do the production and development of all of our assets. So early on, we had to just make sure that we were bringing IT along with us, making sure we had a sales force that had the tools that they needed. So iPad upgrades to enable augmented reality, right? To being able to deploy it on our MDM system. So we've definitely been hand in hand with them from the beginning.
If you want to create a really happy IT or security person, bring them along to this event and walk them through the expo hall and tell them all the different things that you want in your organization. And it's kind of fun to see their response. They have a lot of fun with this technology because it's way different from the technology that they normally deal with. But it also gives you a jump start in getting the technology into your organization.
I was really lucky too with our IT department because when COVID hit and our leadership said, hey, we've got a great tool, let's double down. I brought IT in and he actually helped me he's like, you don't need a whole new headcount. We can't get headcount. So you can hire contract workers to help project manage. You can help. And so he helped me with more than just making sure the right systems were configured and integrations were in place. So they were amazing. I'm very lucky to have a great IT partner.
It's excellent to have the IT teams that can enable. So that's definitely a good one. I want to talk about the challenges for a moment. So, of course, with this type of technology in an enterprise space, there's IT and security challenges. And those are very real challenges. And there's a number of other things that can surface. I wanted to ask each of you about what you had in the early days as a challenge or the most significant challenge. And it's fine if it hasn't been solved yet.
So for us, we kind of have an opposite experience for the IT side. We were trying to move as fast as we could, and we left them behind. And that came back to bite us in the end because we needed tools and technology that they needed to implement so that we could do what we needed to do. So that was a challenge in the beginning. And also there's a lot of change management effort that goes along with adopting a new technology. When you have 5,000 technicians that are very used to learning with hands-on, they want to turn screws, they want to push buttons, but now you're going to put them in front of a computer and let them learn that way. There was a lot of pushback for them to be able to learn that way. And I think over the years, they've started to adopt it. They've started to get more comfortable with it. And that's, as we're continuing down our journey, we're trying to slow down a little bit, still looking for efficiencies, but also understanding that change management component.
Yeah, I can connect to that. Change. It is change management. That's very important for any project, but certainly for VR. One of the main reasons is that when you talk to a department and you would say, look what the opportunities for VR, how great they are. But some people are not that enthusiastic immediately, and I think especially because I've had that answer literally. Ivo, we've been doing this for 20 years and it's working fine, so why should we change it? So they say, and they have a point, it was working so far, but it's not a good way to say, so let's keep it this way. But you're actually trying to replace a business process with VR, and but they have a process in place, so that is the challenge. And some people are much more open for it than others. And what I think is you have to find people that are open for it, start small, and let the other people see what's happening. And of course, you have to try and put as often as you can to put the VR glasses on these people. It makes a huge change. So they have to put them on and then try a small project. And we call it the oil stain effect. So you hope that the oil stain will get bigger and bigger. And that's, I think, the way to do it.
So change management is interesting. I mean, back the first event here that I want to say it was 13 years ago-ish, they were talking about culture at that time. And I thought, what are they talking about? I assumed the groups would love to use the technology and would be excited to bring it in. And of course, that doesn't always turn out that way. And so we focused on some things that could help with change management. And that's something that I think is worth encouraging organizations who are in the early stages of bringing the technology in to put some thought into the change management side and how you're going to get buy-in from all the different levels, from the executive level all the way down to the end user. is important.
Yeah, agreed. So the same president who was my sponsor, I would say, for the project, and this was a side project at the time. I was in sales full time, and he said, "Okay, assemble a team, get a team together of your peers, get the managers across the regions to nominate them." And so I had my team of champions very early, that we helped build it. We iterated over time. We pulled all their feedback routinely, so they kind of felt ownership of that, and they were spreading the word, right, evangelizing. Which was great. I think the big difference came when you have your leadership, you have your ground support, and then we needed something in between to keep the momentum up, So what happened was in the pandemic, I said, if you're doubling down, this is a full-time job, right? So I need a team. And so they did. They gave me a team. One of my team members is sitting in the audience today, very excited. And it's the team that we have, it's so important because you build the content. Building it's not enough. If you build it, they don't always come. You need a team to help you. It's evangelization, but it's also showing them in their real life, day-to-day scenario, how to use it, right? Getting them excited about it, helping them understand, and that's the change management piece that my team comes in and helps make it real to the team,
Excellent.
So I think that really made a difference for our team.
Excellent. Now, there's another question that many organizations ask me, and it's related to being in a pilot stage and getting out of the pilot stage into either real application or scalable application. We often call it pilot purgatory, where you get stuck in that pilot mode. How would you recommend organizations make sure they don't get stuck in pilot purgatory? And what's the difference between being in a pilot phase and then transitioning into that scalable solution that you can deploy broadly?
MVP.
Yes.
I think having small wins, right, where you can deploy certain amounts of, and that's what we've been trying to do. So from our perspective, I would say the minimum viable product to get something out, and then you have something to go by, right? So instead of building the perfect solution, iterate over time, right? And that's worked for us.
Yeah, ours was, ours was really focused on data, so it was very similar. So we started with one of our classes, we started using the 3D models, and we started running that class more frequently so we could get additional feedback from the technicians. And when we started to see an increase in those post-class surveys, in the satisfaction and the effectiveness, things like that. So then we started working with our engineering team to see the dispensing models that we produce, so we could get those CAD models and start rolling it out for additional classes. And we continued to see that growth in metrics, and we could take that back to the business and say, look, they're more satisfied with these classes. They feel like they're learning more, and if you start looking at performance metrics, you'll see a slight uptick in that as well. So now it's just a matter of working with other manufacturers to get those CAD models. But I think as long as you understand the data and the levers to pull, then that helps tell the right story to the right people so that additional efforts can be made.
Okay.
Yeah, well, one of my tasks is to try and embed XR into your organization, because you can have nice pilots, you can even have more than that, but you have to, well, it's basically very simple, try and make, how do you say it, you have to address the ownership, find owners for it, and make agreements with them. You are responsible for this, you're responsible for that. And you have to find these owners to keep it in the air when there's something has to change in the XR product, which is possible. So don't just put it in your organization, but even within ground services, it's already quite big. You have to organize it, really organize it. And it's not easy, but that's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you have enthusiasts who will have a VR project for 2 or 3 years, and then it might not go on. Also, you have our IT department, who will do the maintenance on the system, and they will keep an eye on it. And if there's anything breaking down, etc., we will make a deal with them that they will help us. And
Right.
so you have to really organize it.
Maintenance, user experience is everything, right? So you got to keep the momentum up, and I agree. So any vendor we work with, they have to show me that they're able to support. If the browser changes,
Yeah.
it's not going to break the system, right? Because if my team that tries it the first time can't get on it, I've lost them, you know?
Yeah.
So adoption's always a challenge, and I think all those points make 100%.
It helps to be as frictionless as possible for the end user.
Yeah.
On the architecture type of topic, if a company is starting to bring in the technology at the start of their effort, it simplifies many things because they can build an architecture that brings in this technology from the start. I assume that each of you are bringing in the technology into a pre-existing situation, or there's a traditional use case that you're bringing XR into. And do you have to have XR integrate into an existing architecture?
Yeah, when we started using headsets, we consistently ran into issues with firewalls, right? So we had issues there, so we had to work with our IT team to understand, what ports need to be open and all the technical stuff that goes into it. But it's something that we didn't necessarily see as a potential. We thought, all right, if we can get on Wi-Fi, then great. But without having open access, we had to kind of figure out how to best implement, best work with IT. And we ended up getting like a separate dedicated network to our space so that we could focus on, doing the things that we need to without interfering with anything else on the corporate network.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't work for the IT department myself, or now it's called the XR Center of Excellence. But the great thing nowadays is that there are products on the market that are quite accessible. Like we are using the Oculus Quest 3 and they're building it in Unity. So if you get the right people on board, you can basically build it yourself. I'm saying it a little bit too simple probably, but and we don't need many KLM platforms, IT platforms to connect it to at the moment. It might happen, but training programs are quite separate things, and so there are not really big issues for us there.
Good.
We have chosen to build outside of our network for a variety of reasons. So I have IT along with me. Just throwing it out there if they're there in the audience. But there's certain things that we build a lot of content that is, public consumption. It's all built so that, all of our customers can see it on our website if we want. So we just kept it very open, and we didn't have to be behind the network. So it just made it a lot easier to move faster. In our scenario. Now we're kind of going back and trying to figure out, we're adding single sign-on to parts of our applications, and it's a bit of it takes time,
It allows you to work in parallel, so you can take advantage of the technology's value, while in parallel working towards integrating it into additional systems.
Even our website, so a lot of the content we build is sales tools, but also great marketing tools, great user experience on our website. It's taken me 3 years to get 30 product tours on our website. Whereas I've had my team, we've had $100 million in sales attributed to our 3D tours from our sales team at the same amount of time. So having them kind of exist in those ways, it may or may not be easy to do that, but for us, it was the path that we chose 5 years ago, and I'm grateful for that. But you can't scale without getting integrated into a lot of the different other tools that your organization uses. And so we're kind of doing both in parallel.
Right. As you integrate into the systems and see the value, I've referred to this technology in the past as the Moneyball of enterprise. Has anyone seen the movie Moneyball? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm a mathematician, so I love that movie. And you see how they can use statistics and data to provide incredible value. Are you seeing this technology provide the value, or do you see in the near term areas where it makes big impacts?
Yeah, we're seeing it a lot in technician performance. So for a while, we had a challenge of tying individual technician performance to their attendance in class and experience with our simulations and things. But now that we have a unique identifier for each technician, we're actually looking at how does their participation with our VR experiences, how does that impact performance? And we're looking at We have 3 key metrics. One is fixed right first visit, so did they fix it right the first time? Time on location, how long did they spend? And then did they complete it in under 12 hours? So once the call comes in, were they able to go out and complete under 12 hours? So when we start looking at efficiency metrics, then we can start tying dollar value to, all right, so they're spending less time on calls, they're spending less time or less money in parts because they're more competent in fixing the actual problem. So then we can look at cost savings for Coca-Cola as a whole to understand how big of an impact do these small experiences add up to. And it's nice to see that positive trajectory.
So on that one, I'm hearing faster, better, cheaper, which is the pyramid of usually you can only accomplish 2 at the cost of the third one. But it sounds like this technology is addressing all 3 of those.
Yeah.
Well, as you all know, the VR, XR is pioneering. So, and it's a lot of, it's all new, well, we're doing it for a couple of years now, but it still feels like it's still, we are learning a lot about it. And for example, we think that we are trying to develop a de-icer in virtual reality. These big trucks, and they're spraying the aircrafts when it's wintertime. It's very suitable for VR, and we think that we can really cut back in training days. But we're not there yet, so we see the potential. But it's always a challenge in advance to try and convince people that it's going to bring money. And of course, you can measure it afterwards. But first, you have to make it. So that's a hard thing.
Yeah, agreed. So we actually we have a sales team, and we tried integrating the whole application to Salesforce a long time ago. They didn't want to click extra clicks. There wasn't always opportunities made. The way that we integrated it wasn't perfect. So they just didn't use it. So I said, you know what, let's just put a little tag in your opportunity in Salesforce. So we put the little tag in, the checkbox, did you use a tool, specify the tool you used, and they did that. And we kind of made it a KPI for their PMD goals, their professional development goals. And that worked. And so they started to create that behavior. And so we were able to show the revenue association with the tools, which helped us to build the program and sustain the funding for the program. But even better was we developed other tools because they believed in what we were doing. So we were able to take the funding, and I own the funding. We talked in another session earlier about, only being able to build what other people that hold the budgets want you to build. And for us, I hold the budget and I understand what the sales team needs. And so I work with marketing and I work with our SMEs to help them build it, but I have ownership of that. So that's another big one. And I think that the integrations to Salesforce, while I liked the idea of it being automated, that checkbox, super simple, was easy for my Salesforce admin to do, and it kept the program going. So we also saw with that checkbox a 10% increase in win rate over that 3-year period. So that's something I can sell to every executive in my company, which was great.
Those types of numbers are meaningful.
Absolutely.
Keeps everyone happy.
Yeah.
Right? So over time, well, I'll start with today, we see devices and even platforms surfacing and some others phasing out. And this happens. It's not a new thing. It's happened over time since I've been in the industry, and I started back in 2003. How do you future-proof your plans in such a dynamic environment where if you were to try to plan 2 years out from now, what capabilities are going to be and what you're going to be using within your organization? How do you plan so that you can future-proof your plans without knowing what's going to be there in the future?
I think for us, it kind of comes down to the partnership that you build with vendors. So the audience that we support is external to Coca-Cola. They're not Coca-Cola employees, so we can't mandate or control through like an MDM system any kind of device. So all the stuff that we do has to be device agnostic. And it also has to be available on like PC-based environments, not always just mobile technology. So understanding that as a barrier or I guess guide rail. That's something that we look for when we partner with vendors. So we need to understand from a roadmap perspective, we can't be tied to any kind of device. We want to be able to use any platform that exists. And I think starting with that in mind, it kind of helps future-proof any new technology that does emerge.
I think you're right. I think being device agnostic is very powerful.
Yeah.
It allows some agility.
Yeah, and choice for the end users who are using the tech, right? Not everybody feels good. I mean, I love VR, but I can't wear the goggles, like I can't wear the headset very long. I get motion sick. You know, I'm a big proponent, but I can't wear it very long.
It gives you options.
So it gives you options, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at it a very practical way. We use the Oculus Quest 3 and, like I said, the Unity, and I think in a practical way, I'm happy if we can get a VR product running and for 2 or 3 years. And in this example, we used to use the Oculus Quest 2, and now it's the 3. So it's a couple of years you can look ahead, but not much more than that. And I'll be happy if we can carry on like that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, what's the life cycle of the information or the content that you're actually building in that environment, right? So is it going to exceed the life of the technology? Then definitely you have to think about that beforehand. But some of the content may change, right? Especially training courses, and there's nuances. So I think that there's, you know, if you have the right vendors and the right internal team members, if you have an internal development team, if they know that up front, that's pretty powerful.
And I think that's part of it too. Like if you're talking about working with vendors or building in-house, it's almost like you can partner with vendors early as you build the skill set in-house. So once you have it in-house, then it makes it a little bit more agile to make small changes and, you know, keep things updated.
Yeah, exactly. In our scenario, our company is very large, and we had a few different tracks going on in various parts of the company. Another person's here today who works in our manufacturing businesses, and he uses XR in a completely different format than we do over here in our sales team. But at some point you come together and you say what are we going to standardize on? How are we going to scale this? How are we going to come together and offer solutions all together as a team? And I think that's kind of what we're looking at right now. We have a new corporate immersive team that's trying to help us kind of set some standards for the company as well.
Now, I'm going to apologize for this next one in advance, because this is a question that I never liked being asked when I was on stage. But I think it's an important topic, so I'm going to ask it. So I'm sorry. Uh-oh. If you had the chance to change something or do something differently, what would you do differently?
I think it's an easy one for us. We would get IT involved earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
a good one.
Yeah, it's important. And I think since we didn't do that, we realized the importance, and as we continue down our journey, they have become very good partners to us for that reason. So I would say if we were to do it again, we'd do it right the first time.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there are any people in the audience who work for a big company. Within KLM, it's not up to me, but I'm trying to. One of the things that we are running into is that it's very separate. So I call it an island, right? So there's an island over there. And then when I got this job, I started to look around me and ask around, and I noticed that they don't even know from each other what they're doing. So. That is one thing I think a big company should at least, you should know from each other what you're doing, and you don't have to do exactly the same. There are specific circumstances why you are choosing a HoloLens, or why you're choosing an Oculus, or why you're choosing virtual reality or augmented reality. But you should bundle these forces together, and that's one thing I'm trying to do. So that's one of the main, I think it's in more big companies, but I think you should work together and at least be aware of each other and make the choice, learn from each other, you know. It's no use trying to invent the wheel again, let's say.
I fully agree. And I'd say from my standpoint, it's not just the people developing immersive tech alongside you somewhere else in the company, but it's also the matrix, right? Your marketing partners, your product management partners, like bringing everyone along with you is definitely something that if I look back, we could have done a little bit better had I known. But for me, the big one was we chose an external vendor early for a lot of great reasons, and I still work with them today, love them. But they have a very closed software system. So as I look at expanding our capabilities into learning and development and building out training programs, I'm now kind of challenged to pull those 3D assets out of that one system and pull them into other systems. So I would say if you're thinking of setting up an XR program, definitely think about where you want it to go, because you want to make sure that those models, and I think I'm repeating something that the previous session might have said, but make sure those models can be used multiple ways. Build once and use in many ways. And you might have to alter them every a little bit for each different use case, but at least it could be in a more universal format that you can use in many different ways. And it also brings a better ROI to the cost of that development as well.
Okay, completely different topic here. This morning in Ori's keynote, we saw AI loves XR. So the question is, do you see AI becoming a thing with your efforts? And if so, how do you see AI enabling what you want to do?
So for us, AI is a little challenging because it's only as good as the information that you can find. So if you think about Coca-Cola as a private company, a lot of the stuff that we have is not private, like our recipe, for example, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to get into a space where AI becomes beneficial to a degree, but I think it could help. Like if you were to ask for a 3D restaurant space. So you use that as the base, and now you build on top of that. Then it becomes extremely helpful because you don't spend the time creating something that is easily done in a different way.
Right.
Well, yeah. When I started working with VR, I'm really enthusiastic about the subject, of course. But then AI was coming in, and I thought, oh, well, I'm in VR, so that's not me. Well, I was a bit wrong there. It's going so fast, it changes every half a year. I do see a lot of possibilities. In training, soft skill training, for example, if we could use soft skill training for our passenger handling staff, I see a lot of possibilities. You could do role playing with an avatar that is guided by AI, and you can limit the AI so that it's not completely open, but you can give it some rules of what it can talk about or whatnot. So on that side, I see a lot of possibilities. The other thing, I was surprised when I got into VR. Wow, you have remote repair. You can have somebody here, and then there's also somebody at the head office who can help you in VR. Wow, that's great. But now we're talking about people repairing an airplane engine, and you could actually have AI guide you through it. It has to learn first, but you don't maybe even need a coach anymore. If you can get an AI completely up to date about one certain engine type, it can help you in that way. So it's rapidly evolving, I think.
I think it's very important with the challenges that we have right now with workforce. So being able to take people who are new and green in their positions and have them have the resources that they need very quickly. And I think AI can help whittle down that time when our experts are so busy. We can keep experts focused on the tasks that require their expertise, and maybe use AI to help supplement some of that knowledge base.
Agreed. And from a customer experience standpoint, I found we've built some more elaborate 3D environments for whether it's a virtual event space or like a workflow journey. So you understand, like you follow a sample from collection to preparation to analysis, and I don't have the click-through on those. And so I'm like, I think AI could help as a guide, because I don't think everybody's ready for that like exploration-based learning the same way. So I think that could be helpful to have that guidance from AI. The second one is content development. I'm already using it for content development. all the time. So I think it'll be helpful from that standpoint. And then of course the soft skills, 100% agree. As we start to look at launching out a learning and development program, we're really excited to build in some training modules through avatars and scenario-based learning for our sales team to get them closing faster and quicker and more often.
Are there any technologies that you're most excited about that you have not implemented yet? Or areas of this technology use cases that might not be quite ready just yet, but are close?
Yeah, well, I could start. I think there is, for example, a way that we can use it in supporting our staff of doing their job. We have ground handling staff handling passengers, and they have an iPad right now with all the information. If you really want to look ahead and be innovative, you could see that with a pair of glasses here, and then get all the information. You scan the boarding card, and you see all the information of the passenger, missed his flight, what is the next flight, and so on. You can have it right here. But of course, do passengers want to see an Oculus Quest 3 on the face of staff? Maybe not, but that's one thing I've learned here. There are so many types of glasses, and there are even ones that have just a little screen here, and you still have normal eyesight. So that would be certainly, it was a surprise for me, and there is even an airline that's already testing it. So there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for us, very similar. For the, I think the term is deskless worker, right? Someone that's out in the field doing things like that. For our technicians, it would be great for them to have some sort of glasses or headset or something that they could wear on the job, and it would have an AR component so they could scan the dispenser, they could look at different components, they could understand how it all kind of works together, they could get remote support that they see directly in their view, but then also integrate it with our parts ordering system. So if they have like an exploded diagram of the dispenser, they can say, I just need this, 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 add to cart, and now it's a seamless experience instead of having to go into a system, find the part number, type it in, and order it that way. And it can, all the information from their work order can be tied to that cart order so that once they hit checkout, it's shipped directly to that store, so they don't need to worry about getting it at the warehouse and then coming back. It's just there for the next time that they're on location.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just so many opportunities. The wearables will help our field sales team for sure. As you said, there's a lot of we have a lot of turnover after COVID, and we have a lot of tenure on our team, and we have, I think, 30% of our workforce is due to retire in the next 5 years. So we're looking at it saying, hey, how do we leverage the technology that's out there now, but what's coming to not only get our team ready and up and running faster, but I would say even capture before these people retire. Capture that knowledge, and pull that in as SMEs, because they are so, they're such experts. So we have a video program as well. So I'm all about pulling together the different types of media and technology to help people ingest it the way that they want to, and giving them options, right? So yeah, I'm excited at pulling everything into one ecosystem and being able to deliver something to a user or basically a rep or a customer even, where they can just say, hey, I'd like the virtual reality version of that new product onboarding. And they can put on their whatever device that they use and have that very interactive experience. Or if they prefer to get the PDF and read the manual, that's up to them, They give them options.
Right. So I wanted to check and see, does anyone have any questions for the panel? Any questions?
It's hard to see. There's one.
Oh, I see one.
You mentioned getting CAD data from your suppliers. I know that can often be difficult with IP concerns. So just curious how you've been able to navigate that.
So it's been a very slow process. It kind of comes down to signing NDAs, obviously, is a big one. But what we did was we showcased to those suppliers, here's how we plan on using it. We have no intention of re-engineering your products or anything like that. We're helping technicians fix your equipment faster so that the people that are buying your equipment will continue to buy it because people know how to fix it. So we kind of put it in the perspective of this is the benefit to you, and here's how we're going to use it so that they know we're not trying to take any IP from them.
We have another question up here. Thank you, right here.
So you guys kind of touched upon this, but I'd like to dig a little deeper. When you write the business justification case for something you're doing, and I do a lot of that for companies, it's very challenging. You know, how much revenue are we really going to enhance? We're going to take an assumption, you know, we'll get, I don't know, a 5% lift, a 10% lift, whatever you think. What's the real cost going to be? We don't really know what the cost is going to be. We can take a guess. You're not going to do it for 1 year. You're going to do it for 5 years to show some sort of a return and a break even. So how are you getting your justifications approved, or do you have this wonderful management team that just flowers you with money and says, you know, go for it?
Oh, can you give me his name? Oh, that's a very good question. We're talking ROI, right? Return of investment. I've just written a business case. Sometimes even VR is an innovation, right? And sometimes you just have to do it. And sometimes the times are right and people find the money for it and go. And sometimes it's harder. But there are cases to be made, like for the de-icing, for example, which we are thinking of now. You can reduce your training days because the training will be quicker. It's a long story. I can talk to you after the meeting. But so there is money to be made, but you have to convince management because you're right. You're talking about 5 year and future, and you haven't proven it yet. But you need people that believe in VR and believe, anybody knows that if you reduce a training with 3 days, that it's going to save you money. But controllers in your organization, the people that handle the money, they are always, they want answers, right? So you need people to believe in it. You need a sponsor to move forward, but it's certainly always a theme on conferences like this. But I would advise just keep going because we believe in it, and it's anybody knows by now that VR is here to stay. So that would be my answer.
I would agree too. I had a combination of a sponsor who just believed in it, and then he said, "Oh, you know, sometimes you just have to do something because it's the right thing to do." And I'm like, "That's amazing! Oh my God, is this how this business world works?" And then leadership changed, and they said, "Okay, you got to give me some numbers," you know. But what I did was I looked at it as leading and lagging KPIs, right? So I look at engagement. So we have engagement KPIs with the different tools, and then I have the lagging, which is the revenue and the win rate. So if we look at those alone, you know, we've been able to really prove our case year after year. We're starting the training program, and that started a whole new discussion on how do we like right now we cannot get funding for new things. It's very difficult. And so we said, you know, we have to prove to our leadership that this not having a training program will actually cost them money. And so we looked at it from, you know, the time to ramp up. So how many training days do we need our rep to be doing before they're actually feeling comfortable and actually productive in the field? And what does that cost us? So we looked at the average territory size, we looked at the average onboarding time, we looked at their, you know, opportunity logging, we looked at their revenue generation, and we came up with a few. It's very difficult, you know, but we came up with some numbers that made sense, luckily from our pool of reps that exist. And I think, like, if you look at that, and then you look at things like outside of revenue, just, okay, what is our demo inventory? How much can we reduce our demo inventory by having digital twins? What is the amount of money we spend shipping those demos around? What is what's the cost to fix them when they get damaged in shipment? What is the cost of me sending a rep every time I want to get a demo done? All of those things that I still have a very hard time pulling all those costs out of our system, but they're so obvious that our leadership's like, yep, no problem. Like, absolutely. If it saves like 5 flights a year and, you know, 20 freezers at $10,000 a pop done, so you can find ways to justify in different ways. It depends on the business, of course.
Yeah, I would say, it comes back to the numbers too, right? So for us, we had a drastic decrease in us shipping people and equipment around the country when we started hosting things virtually. So we consistently look at a cost avoidance metrics. How much would we be spending if we were still doing this in person? So we look at that, and then we also look at, from a training and development standpoint, you always look at your post-class surveys. So we look at one called perceived learning impact and virtual learning effectiveness. So how effective was the virtual experience in helping you grasp the concepts? And then from the perceived learning impact, it's how relevant was the content and how quickly are you going to be able to apply what you learned? So when we see those metrics going up and we can start to tie that back to performance metrics, then the ROI case kind of builds itself.
Right.
One short remark, what I would advise is to monitor it after you introduced it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely have a measurement system in place when you start.
And I'll add a funny story real quick here. Never got to run a full ROI. We would get started with the ROI in the early days. We passed over the 5% savings, the 10%. We found a way to save like a 90% savings. We ran incredibly detailed cost analysis. When it came to the savings, we went in and said, we're saving $38 per unit. Company buys 2 million units per year. And they would say, what are you doing? Play with numbers, go deploy faster. And the next year someone would surface and say, have you run an ROI? And say no, and before I could explain, they would say, go run an ROI. We would come up with another metric and it would hit the same thing. Quit playing with numbers and go deploy faster. So I think part of it is finding those use cases, like they're mentioning here, that have value that the leadership can see.
Yeah, to the business, for sure. They have to be relevant.
And I think we're just about out of time, but if anyone has questions, if you want to find us around the event, we would be happy to chat. And I'd love to thank the panelists for joining today and sharing your willingness to share your insight. And thank you all for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.